Hello everyone and welcome to Envision Academy. Today is the second day of this initiative of the current affairs. আজি 2 নম্বৰ দিন। কালি বহুত সংখ্যক লোকে এস্পাইৰেন্টছ কমিউনিটিৰ পৰা ডিমাণ্ড আহিল যে কাৰেণ্ট এফেয়াৰ্ছ এডিটৰিয়েল এনালাইচিছটো কণ্টিনিউ কৰিব লাগে। চ' আই এম হিয়াৰ বেক হিয়াৰ উইথ দ্য কাৰেণ্ট এফেয়াৰ্ছ এনালাইচিছ। এতিয়া আমি একচুৱেলি এইটো চাব লাগে যে এটা আৰ্টিকলৰ পৰা এটা এডিটৰিয়েলৰ পৰা কেনেকৈ মেক্সিমাম বেনিফিট আমি ডিৰাইভ কৰিব পাৰোঁ। হাউ many things can be learned from one particular editorial. So এইটো আমি আজিৰ এই সেকেন্ড ভিডিঅ'ত এই ইণ্ডিজিনিয়াছ নলেজ এণ্ড কনজাৰভেশ্যন টাইটেল এডিটৰিয়েলটো চাম বাই ডক্টৰ সংগীতা বৰঠাকুৰ। অ'কে, চ' আই উইল ৰিড। মই ইয়াতে পঢ়ি যাম আৰ্টিকল, আপোনালোকে মোৰ লগতে পঢ়ি যাব। ঠিক আছে, লেটছ ষ্টাৰ্ট। Indigenous knowledge and conservation. Indigenous communities have developed a deep ecological understanding over centuries through observation, experience, and practice. This knowledge, known as Indigenous Ecological Knowledge (IEK), is vital for conserving biodiversity and sustaining ecosystems. In regions such as Assam and the Northeast, where biological and cultural diversity intersect, recognizing and integrating IEK into conservation efforts is increasingly important. Indigenous ecological knowledge encompasses a diverse array of traditional practices in farming, fishing, hunting, forest use, and wildlife management. These practices are shaped by deep familiarity with local landscapes and species and by a sophisticated understanding of seasonal cycles, animal behavior, plant regeneration, and ecological changes. Insights that often take modern science decades to document or fully appreciate. For example, sustainable shifting cultivation practiced by several indigenous communities in Assam and the Northeast not only supports forest regeneration and soil fertility, but also maintains a dynamic mosaic of habitats that benefit diverse flora and fauna. Customary fishing restrictions, such as seasonal bans and the protection of breeding grounds, as well as the preservation of sacred groves, have served as remarkably effective informal conservation measures, ensuring the long-term sustainability of resources upon which communities depend. In Assam, traditional knowledge systems among indigenous and tribal communities emphasize community stewardship, where village councils, gaonburhas, and community elders regulate access to and use of shared resources such as ponds, beels, forests, grazing lands, etc., to ensure collective benefit. Rituals and spiritual beliefs such as offerings and festivals linked to rain, fertility, and harvest play a significant role in conservation by embedding respect for nature within cultural identity and everyday practices. These belief systems are closely integrated with indigenous farming methods, including the use of forest litter and organic residues as compost, terrace and shifting cultivation in suitable landscapes, and plant-based natural pest repellents, all of which contribute to soil fertility and sustainable crop yields. Traditional water management practices, including bamboo and channel-based irrigation systems, support paddy cultivation, betel nut gardens, tamul, and other agricultural needs. Unwritten customary norms further govern the sustainable harvesting of forest produce and restrict encroachment, particularly within areas designated as tribal belt and blocks (TBBs). These customary systems, tribal belt and blocks of আগতে মেইনছ question আহিছে, ইয়াতে মই মেনশ্যন কৰি দিছোঁ, sorry for the interruption. These customary systems increasingly intersect with formal governance mechanisms in Assam, where state policies and proposed legal frameworks, such as the District Land Tribunal Bill 2025, seek to reinforce traditional land rights and protect customary tenure in TBBs. At the same time, the community-based management of common pool resources, forests, wetlands, and fisheries coexists with government regulations, resulting in a layered and complex system of resource governance unique to the socio-cultural landscape of Assam. However, rapid socio-economic changes, land use transformation, and modern development pressures have weakened traditional systems. Younger generations are increasingly disconnected from indigenous practices, while conservation policies often overlook local knowledge in favor of top-down approaches. As a result, conservation programs sometimes face resistance from communities or fail to achieve desired outcomes. Global conservation experience shows that excluding local communities from decision-making often weakens conservation efforts, leading to conflict, illegal resource use, and habitat loss. Whereas community-managed forests and wetlands usually achieve better biodiversity outcomes. integrating indigenous ecological knowledge with modern science strengthens wildlife monitoring, climate adaptation, and sustainable resource management, as indigenous communities often detect subtle environment changes early. Indian policy increasingly recognizes this role, and COP 16 of the Convention of the Biological Framework, okay, the biological diversity in 2024 advanced indigenous participation globally. Respecting and revitalizing such knowledge is essential for inclusive, effective, and culturally rooted conservation futures. Okay, so this is the thing about the author who is C. Sridhar. So this into our article indigenous knowledge and conservation, whatever we studied here, this becomes important for your essay paper 1, GS paper 2 polity and governance, GS paper 3 biodiversity environment disaster management. Also it can be important from GS paper 1 culture. Okay, culture and geographic mix koi kine both in question hai. So APSC education paper 1 question paper 2 poa jai, paper 2 question 2, paper 3 paper 5 or 2 poa jai. So everything gets intermingled, right? So everything is related. So GS paper 3 biodiversity environment disaster management, and GS paper 4 ethics also it is important obviously. GS paper 5 to hey Assam paper. So आगे बढ़ते हैं. Now about the article, ইয়াতে article mention কৰা আছিলে indigenous ecological knowledge. So what does this mean, indigenous ecological knowledge? So indigenous ecological knowledge মানে it refers to the cumulative body of knowledge, practices and beliefs developed by indigenous communities over hundreds or thousands of years through direct interaction with their local environment. So এটা local ecosystem বা local environment, এটা local biodiversity community হওক যি হওক local area এটা মানে তাৰে মানুহকেইজনে কিবা কাৰোবাৰ বেমাৰ হ'লে কাৰোবাৰ কিবা হ'লে চ' উইথ দ্য লোকেল ৰেমেডিজ তেওঁলোকে ট্ৰিট কৰি দিব পাৰে, হয় নে নহয়? তেওঁলোকে জানে যে এইটো চইলটো কেনেকৈ ফাৰ্টাইল কৰি ৰাখিব লাগে, হোৱাট শুড বি কাল্টিভেটেড, হোৱাট ইজ বেষ্ট ফৰ দিছ প্লেচ, অ'কে, চ' হাউ দ্য what as per the climate মানে climate resilient crops কোনখিনি ইয়াতে grow কৰিব পাৰি, so they are well versed with it. So that knowledge, the indigenous ecological and the ecological balance কেনেকৈ maintain কৰি ৰাখিব পাৰি, so the indigenous community knows those things, right? They have the immense amount of knowledge and which cannot be searched upon. So this knowledge this knowledge is referred to as indigenous ecological knowledge. Okay, as simple as that. So it is a dynamic living system that guides sustainable resource management, conservation, and cultural survival. So examples over here, agriculture shifting cultivation zone that allows forest regeneration, water management, traditional bamboo-based irrigation systems in Assam, Meghalaya, Mizoram, Arunachal Pradesh. Okay, so these things. Conservation, sacred groups in Meghalaya, as you know, both in sacred groups say that Baira Manu, tourist ba Baira pa Manu, even they particular tribe Manu. সোমায় জাষ্ট আফটাৰ 1 year মানে 1 year মূৰে যাতে পূজা কৰে ফৰেষ্টৰ গ্ৰুপৰ পূজা কৰে. চ' ডেট মাষ্ট চেক্ৰেট দোজ গ্ৰুপছ আৰ প্ৰটেক্টেড ফৰেষ্ট পেচেছ, seasonal bans on hunting or fishing. Okay, biodiversity, use of numerous native crop varieties and ethnobotanical knowledge. Let's move forward. Now exactly এই আৰ্টিকেলটোৱে এডিটৰিয়েলটোৱে কয় কি, so indigenous ecological knowledge কি হয় আমি চালোৱে. So is crucial for effective conservation, especially in biodiversity-rich and culturally diverse regions like Assam and Northeast India. By integrating IEK with modern science and policy, a more inclusive and sustainable conservation model can be achieved. Okay, so integrate kora kotha koise indigenous ecological knowledge IEK with modern science and policy. So very deadly combination, right? A more inclusive and sustainable conservation model can be achieved. So it will be more inclusive and sustainable it will be a sustainable conservation model. Now, the article highlights Assam as a key example of IEK in practice where community stewardship is centered, right? So, আমি জানোৱে কাৰণ আমি গুটেখিনি অসমীয়া. So, governance is managed through customary systems involving village councils and elders. গাঁওবুঢ়াৰ কথা কোৱা গৈছিল to regulate access to shared resources like forests and poles. These practices include sustainable shifting cultivation, seasonal fishing bans, and sacred groves to balance use and regeneration. So, এইখিনি আমি পঢ়িলোৱে already. Now, a unique feature in Assam is the interaction between unwritten customary rules and formal state governance. So unwritten customary rules মানে hey indigenous communities যিখিনি follow কৰি আহিছে by generation, right? Customs and traditions. So আৰু formal state governance মানে এই আমাৰ যিখিনি laws and state government. So national laws, forest laws, okay? So these things এইটো combination ঠিক আছে combine কৰি কিনে so আসামটো মানে unique এটা কেছ বনি যায় য'ত নেকি unique customary unwritten customary rules of the local communities আৰু the laws mandated by the government মানে গভৰ্ণমেণ্টে যোনকেইটা ল বনায় তাত মানে customary rules কেইটা ইনক্লুড কৰে so this makes Assam a unique feature or unique case okay so the editorial notes that unwritten norms govern sustainable harvesting and restrict encroachment in designated tribal belts and blocks so tribal belts and blocks কি হয় আমি obviously পঢ়িম editorial লাষ্টৰ ফালে আপোনালোকে পাব ডিটেইলত কভাৰ কৰা আছে tribal belts and blocks okay so it says that unwritten norms govern sustainable harvesting and restrict encroachment in designated tribal belts and blocks so tribals কি হয় তেওঁলোকৰ কি বুলি কয় যোনটো নলেজ থাকে unique indigenous knowledge of the ecology of living with the nature so that should not be harmed right that should remain pristine as it is okay they are more connected to the nature so but ami ajikali dekhi ki asu je encroachment hoy ase and people are going and disturbing the tribals okay so these things have been coming to notice of the government so but and to avoid that okay more মানে ফোকাস কৰিব লাগিব হেতু এটা আৰ্টিকলৰ এটা এংগল হয় যেটো কোৱা গৈছে okay now let's see what it says so this is currently intersecting with state policies like the proposed district land tribunal bill 2025 which aims to strengthen these traditional land rights so tribal rights should be strengthened now a philosophy of harmony IEK is rooted in a worldview that sees humans as interconnected with and the environment not as its masters or separate from it okay so humans are not masters of the environment we are not here to exploit the environment we are not here for the fulfilling our greed okay we need to just fulfill our need okay only then there will be sustainable means the consumption will be sustainable and we'll leave the things for the future generation okay so practices are guided by principles of giving back to nature taking only what is needed right and treating all life forms with respect plant-based pet replants organic compost bamboo irrigation systems these are all examples right of being with the nature of supporting the nature right many rituals offerings and festivals are directly linked to ecological cycles rain harvest fertility so it will link thake bahut kini festival right embedding conservation into cultural identity and daily life for example Alia Ligang Mission Community right sowing festival in February marking the safe start of cultivation after floods recede core conservation principle collective restraint and timing prevents premature sowing ensuring soil is stable and coordinating community action to manage shared flood-prone resources sustainably বহাগ or ৰঙালী বিহু আসামটো অসমত এপ্ৰিল বহাগ spring and new year আমাৰ বহাগ বিহু festival marks the start of the agricultural year and seed sowing so these all are the examples another example of Wangala 100 times festival to Garo Meghalaya and parts of Assam also okay harvest thanksgiving to Misi Saljong sun god so after the end of the shifting cultivation আৰু কি বহুতখিনি কমিউনিটিয়ে বহুতখিনি ইকোলজিক্যাল লিংক থকা ফেষ্টিভেল খিনি পাতে so let's move forward now article discuss kora contemporary challenges and risk ki hoy so IEK socio-economic and intergenerational erosion now what does it say IEK systems face several challenges rapid land use changes and development pressures threaten traditional landscapes there's an intergenerational disconnect with younger generations moving away from indigenous practices now in younger generations have comparatively lesser knowledge or no knowledge of the means indigenous practices or the cultures or the customs right compared to the older generations or the old people of that particular community indigenous community now top-down conservation policies often overlook or undervalue local knowledge leading to community resistance and ineffective outcomes top-down conservation policies মানে গভৰ্ণমেণ্টে বনোৱা policies বিলাকে often কি কৰে undervalue local knowledge leading to community resistance and ineffective outcomes so আমাকে lawটো this is not curtailed as per or not tailored as per our needs or as per our customs or our customs and traditions are not integrated in this law so this law is not for us please don't impose these laws so eneki protest bilak hoi thake right na community resistance hoi thake so etu karone and Kamrup district eta yari upor moi eta likhisilu data eta in Kamrup district satellite data shows a large increase in urban built up area okay this directly displaces green cover and disrupts traditional landscapes where IEK is practiced now 18.34% is urban population growth and 2010% per square kilometer density so 18.34% is growth in the urban population so this intense demographic shift increases the demand for housing water and waste disposal directly competing for the same resources managed sustainably by indigenous systems for centuries This rapid urbanization is largely attributed to population growth and high rural-urban migration, with the Kamrup metropolitan district becoming the most urbanized in the state, 82.9% urban population as of 2011. Rural-urban migration. This leads to a double erosion. Knowledge holders in villages as without successors, while migrants in cities often adopt new lifestyles, accelerating the cultural disconnect. Okay? Such changes often replace community managed systems with development models that prioritize immediate economic gain over long term ecological sustainability and customary land rights. Now, other contemporary challenges and risks, formal education and modern economies create disincentives for youth. Yes, erratic climate patterns disrupt IEK's predictive reliability. Inadequate legal recognition leads to marginalization in decision making. Deforestation and industrialization, directly threatens knowledge systems, right? Policy gap, many effective customary laws lack formal legal backing. Okay, so these are the things. So customs and traditions to only followed by the society, if they do not get legal backing, then how come people will strictly adhere to it, right? Synergy with modern frameworks. Indigenous communities generate baseline ecological data through continuous observation over generations. Their knowledge helps scientists frame research hypotheses, understand species behavior and climate indicators early, right? Now, ইয়াতে কি কোৱা আছে যে ইণ্ডিজিনিয়াছ কমিউনিটিজৰ যোনটো ইকলজিকেল ডেটা থাকে থ্ৰু কণ্টিনিউৱাছ observation over the generations. So, যোনটো generational knowledge থাকে, indigenous knowledge, it can help scientists to frame research hypotheses, right? The scientists can frame research hypotheses in a more better manner, right? So, and understand species behavior and climate indicators very early. Now, here an example কিছুমান আছে. For example, a very minute example, very basic example. Fishing communities in Assam predict fish breeding cycles using water color and river flow patterns. So this is very unique case, right? Very basic but very unique. Okay. Himalayan tribes identify climate change through altered flowering times, migration changes in birds. So very much understandable. And also to Arunachala to Khatibo, obviously, right? And also for the tribes of the Nagaland, they also have unique knowledge. Okay, indigenous knowledge that can help the climate scientists basically. Okay. Now, indigenous knowledge, ecological knowledge aligns with the COP16 or Kotha Goa article. Okay, 2024 indigenous participation and conservation, SDGs, sustainable and inclusive SDGs, sustainable development goal. Gompay apnaloke 17 ta SDG goal ase amar. Ek new discuss korim eta video. Policies that ignore local knowledge often face resistance and fail in implementation, as you have already discussed. Now, indigenous ecological knowledge also supports nature-based livelihoods. So, these themes are frequently repeated in APSc mains. মই দেখিছোঁ যে নিজে এক্সপিৰিয়েঞ্চ কৰিছোঁ যে এইখিনি বেষ্টতে মানে this is the context where APSc obviously asks 2 to 3 questions every year. So these things, that's why I've taken up with this article, chosen this article. আজি Sunday হয় এনে article discuss নকৰোঁ বুলি ভাবিছিলোঁ, কালি পুৱা formally start কৰিম বুলি ভাবিছিলোঁ, but I could not resist, okay? So nature-based livelihoods without degrading ecosystems creates income while protecting the resources. Okay. Like ecotourism run by tribal communities. Example, Kaziranga buffer villages, Nagaland community reserves, sustainable harvesting of bamboo, medicinal plants, non-timber forest produce. Okay, so these all are nature-based livelihoods without degrading the ecosystem. ठीक है sir? Now, so what's the way forward for Assam towards an integrated policy framework for Assam? আৰু কি কৰিব লাগিব আমি? কোন দিশত যাব লাগিব? Formal recognition and documentation. Legally recognize indigenous ecological knowledge and customary governance within statutes, within laws like the Forest Rights Act and Assam's proposed land laws. Systematically document practices. Okay. Co-governance model. Establish formal roles for gaonburhas and councils in joint forest or wetland management committees, ensuring free and informed consent. Okay. Intergenerational revitalization. Integrate IEK into indigenous ecological knowledge into school curricula and create digital knowledge repositories for youth. Incentivizing synergy. Fund collaborative research. Incentivizing synergy. Fund collaborative research between institutions like ASTEC, Assam Science, Technology and Environment Council, and indigenous communities. Promote IEK-based bio-enterprises. Climate resilience. Incorporate IEK into Assam's climate action and disaster management plans, valuing its adaptive strategies. Okay. Now, what are the major global initiatives which have been discussed in the article, and other initiatives also to promote the conservation of biodiversity and promote the indigenous community, integrate the indigenous communities more with the biodiversity protection or biodiversity conservation. Okay, so here are some major global initiatives explicitly recognize the vital role of indigenous peoples and local communities (IPLCs) in conservation. Okay, now the Kunming Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework (CBD) Framework 2022 primary goal: new global plan to halt biodiversity loss by 2030. Key role for IPLCs: full and effective participation of IPLCs is a core principle. Specific targets: Target 3, 30 cross 30 target, protect 30% of the planet by 2030, respecting the rights of IPLCs over their territories. Target 22, ensure IPLCs have secure rights to land, resources, and a voice in decisions that affect them. Now, COP 16 কথা কৈছিলে, COP 16 establishment, COP 16 কি কৈছে? The 2024 CBD summit, Kunming Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework asile. The summit, CBD summit created a permanent body specifically to integrate IPLCs. The IPLC মানে আমার কি আসলে? IPLC মানে indigenous peoples and local communities, IPLCs. ঠিক আছে? IPLCs knowledge and participation into all future work. The 2024 CBD summit created a permanent body specifically to integrate IPLC knowledge and participation into all future work. Okay? So that's why COP 16 is important and mentioned in the article. Okay? UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People, UNDRIP 2007. What it is? The foundational global standard for indigenous rights of the people, recognizes the collective rights of indigenous peoples to their lands, territories, resources, and culture. Key rights for conservation: it affords their right to maintain and control their traditional knowledge, participate in decision making, and give or withhold free, prior, and informed consent (FPIC) for projects on their lands. Nagoya Protocol আছে, Convention of Biological Diversity Framework under 2010. Primary goal: ensures fair and equitable sharing of Nagoya Protocol. This has also been asked in APSC prelims also, right? So ensures fair and equitable sharing of benefits from using genetic resources, example plants for medicines. Key role for IPLCs কি হবো? Their prior informed consent (PIC) is required before their traditional knowledge or genetic resources can be accessed. So যোনটো indigenous community আছে তাহাঁতৰ কি লাগিব? Prior informed consent লাগিব before their traditional knowledge or genetic resources access কৰাৰ আগতে তেওঁলোকৰ prior informed consent লাগিব. And secondly, benefits to share হ'ব লাগিব. Access and benefits sharing কথা কৈছো না, fair and equitable sharing of benefits. Benefits monetary or non-monetary from commercialization must be shared with them. এটা কোনো community এটা বা আমি indigenous community এটা বা indigenous knowledge এটা gather কৰিলোঁ, সেইটো knowledgeটো আমি use কৰি কিনে এইটো commercialize কৰিলোঁ. So the monetary gain achieved from that commercialization or that business, made business, okay, that must be shared with the for the development of the local communities or shared with them directly. Okay, so this has been said by the Nagoya Protocol. Okay, so let's move forward. Protected tribal belts and blocks in Assam. It's tribal belts and blocks. Two question actually APSC to what are the tribal belts and blocks? Yes, so key status tribal belts and blocks. Okay, in a separate video, I will share with you the list of the whole tribal belts and blocks in Assam. Yate probably ever silo. In areas where more than 50% of the population belongs to specified notified tribes and communities, their lands become a protected zone. Within this zone, a key rule applies. Land owned by this protected class families cannot be permanently sold, mortgaged, or transferred to anyone who does not belong to the protected classes. This is the core idea behind Assam's tribal belt and blocks. Okay. So protected class families cannot be permanently sold, mortgaged, or transferred to anyone who does not belong to the protected classes. Now, how was this system created? History to key, the line system. Assam in the early 1900s, large numbers of people were moving into the state and settling on lands traditionally used by indigenous tribal communities. To address this, the government first tried a line system around 1920. It was like drawing an imaginary line on a map, declaring new settlers cannot cross this line into tribal areas. However, this system was messy and did not work well on the ground. After much deliberation, a more permanent solution was created in 1947 by adding Chapter 10 to the Assam Land and Revenue Regulation (ALRR) of 1886. This chapter legally established protected belts and blocks. Okay. So, this chapter legally established protected belts and blocks in 1947, adding Chapter 10 to the Assam Land and Revenue Regulation (ALRR) of 1886. Now, simple rule for creation of the tribal belts and blocks: if the population of notified tribal or backward classes in a compact area, a moza or group of villages exceeded 50%, That area could be declared a tribal belt or block to safeguard their interests. Very, very important. It is whole. Now, who manages the land? Most of the tribal belts and blocks, land records and administration in TBBs are managed by the state's revenue department. Special case hold apnar Kabi Anglong, autonomous districts in the districts of Kabi Anglong and Dima Asau. The local autonomous district councils have the power to make their own land and revenue laws. They are not governed by Chapter 10 of the ALRR 1886. Now, what are the rules of a tribal belt or block? The protected measures. Now, one cannot permanently sell or give land to someone from a non-protected class. If the government has any vacant land, khas land within a TBB, it should be leased out only to individuals from the protected classes. Now, if the government has any vacant land, khas land within a TBB, it should be leased out only to individuals from the protected classes for farming and related purposes. If someone from outside the protected classes has illegally occupied land inside a TBB, the revenue officers have the power to evict them and restore the land. সেইকাৰণে আমি দেখি আছো eviction drives বিলাক evidence and blocks পৰা especially. This is a key tool to address enforcement. Now, ঠিক আছে. So tribal bans and blocks কাৰণে এইখিনি আছিলে. এতিয়া আমি পাইছিলো আৰ্টিকেলত পাইছিলো যে আপোনাৰ about the Assam District Land Tribunal Bill 2025. So what was this bill? Why was this bill needed? Let's see. Okay, prelims কাৰণে important হ'ব পাৰে এইটো. Okay, Assam District Land Tribunal Bill 2025. Why was this bill needed? Okay. Land disputes in Assam, especially in tribal belts and blocks, were handled by revenue officers, deputy commissioners. Okay, the process was very slow due to administrative workload. Obviously, deputy commissioner, deputy officers, so forth. Both can already workload thake, so this land disputes handling was very slow. Okay. Now, illegal encroachment and alienation of tribal protected land was also happening, right? Existing appeal system which was there due to already asile section 169 of Assam Land and Revenue Regulation 1886, it was executive driven and then not judicial, ineffective in protecting indigenous land rights. Okay, so it was ineffective. It was proved ineffective in protecting indigenous land rights. Okay, now the bill aims to, number one, create district land tribunals to handle land disputes. Number two, protect land of tribal and protected communities. Number three, ensure speedy disposal of land cases. Number four, prevent illegal encroachment and land alienation. Number 5, replace the old appeal system under section 169. Number 6, implement clause 6 of the Assam Accord 1985. And number 7, strengthen land governance with judicial oversight. So APSC যদি depth যাব বিচাৰে, then obviously it can ask that what does this bill aims to. Okay. Now what is ইয়াত কোৱা গৈছে যে it aims to create a district land tribunals. Now what is a district land tribunal? So it is a specialized quasi-judicial body. Okay, it is set up at district level. It will deal only with land-related disputes in protected areas. It will function like a court, but only for land-related cases, land disputes. Okay. Now tribunals court function koibo. Where will these tribunals function? Initially in 11 districts, focus will be on tribal belts and blocks. Number of districts can be increased or reduced by government notification. Okay. Now, who will run the tribunal? What will be the composition? Now, tribunal ki hoy? Tribunal at a specific purpose karone bonwa eta court hoy na for speedy justice, speedy trials. Right? At experts thakibo lagibo obviously. So each tribunal will have presiding member, retired district judge or additional district judge. Judicial expertise ensured. Member secretary. So this is the expertise. Member secretary, revenue officer, minimum rank assistant commissioner. The tribunal will deal with illegal land transfer in protected areas, eviction of unauthorized occupants, disputes under Chapter 10 of Assam Land and Revenue Regulation 1886, appeals and revisions in revenue land cases. What powers does the tribunal have? The tribunal can summon witnesses, call for land records and documents, pass interim and final orders, enforce decisions like a civil court. Now, kiman dinor murot dispose koribo lage case within 90 days. And it is designed for, as you know, fast track justice. Now, এটা ট্ৰিবিউনেলৰ আপুনি যদি হেৰি পৰা সন্মত নহয়, ভাৰ্ডিক্টৰ পৰা সন্মত নহয়, then obviously you can appeal against that tribunal order in the Guwahati High Court. Okay. Now I've given here the main practice question based on the article I've given it. The most effective guardians of our forests are not forest guards, but the communities who call them home. Critically examine this statement in the Indian context with special reference to the legal frameworks in Assam. So APSC এনেকা question খুদে actually. So তেনেকুৱা question that দিছো মই. So kindly try koribo 15 marks to 50 words again. Submit your answers for evaluation in the Telegram channel. Link is provided in the description. Okay? Thank you all. Good night.